Hi everyone, it's me, Sheka. In this video, let me share with you some good gestures that they practice here in Japan and some bad gestures that we as foreigners were used to doing but are not really acceptable in Japan and may come across as rude or impolite. As a foreigner living in Japan, I think it is important for us to adapt to what is socially and culturally acceptable in Japan. So I hope you'll learn something new from this video and keep an open mind and try to understand the Japanese culture. The first gesture is pointing with your fingers. In Japan, try to avoid pointing to someone using your fingers. When Japanese people point towards someone or something, they extend their hand like this with an open palm facing upwards. And when people refer to themselves, instead of doing this, they'd point to their nose or sometimes even touch their nose when talking about themselves. Next is eye contact. When talking to someone older or to your superiors or bosses at work, try not to stare continuously to the person you're talking to. It may come across as confrontational or impolite if you look straight to the person's eye continuously. Eye contact isn't forbidden in Japan, but you may do so intermittently while looking mostly slightly away, or lowering your eyes like looking at the person's mouth instead of directly looking at the eyes for a long time. Next is giving the sign of approval or thumbs up. Due to Western influence, a thumbs up is quite acceptable in Japan, but most Japanese people would put their arms up like this, like making a circle above their head to say or to signal okay. And to signal no or not okay, they would usually put their arms across in front of them like this to say no. However, please note that the thumbs down gesture or sign is considered rude or offensive in Japan. Another hand gesture that most Japanese people do to politely decline a request or to say no or to say that it is impossible is by putting their hand up like this in front of their face with their hand straightened and waving it repeatedly like this. Just like you're fanning a bad odor. So saying a light-hearted and informal yeah can mean no, I would not want to do it. Or saying muri can mean that's impossible or I can't do it. It can also be a polite way of saying that's incorrect by doing the gesture and saying 違います, 違います, 違います. So if, for example, someone asked you a personal information and you want to say that's incorrect, you can say 違います, 違います. Okay. Other hand gestures that you might want to avoid when talking to someone are folding your arms in front of you like this or putting your hands in your pockets while talking to someone. These gestures might come across as impolite or arrogant, especially when talking to someone of a higher position. I've noticed that most Japanese people would just put their arms on their sides and stand straight while talking to their bosses or to other people. Another gesture that Japanese people do is by extending their hand in front of them and moving it back and forth like this. This hand gesture means come here and not go away. Another gesture that you should avoid doing in Japan is by using your feet to point to things or to move objects. Even if it's just trash or a small thing on the floor, do not use your feet to move them or pick them up. For Japanese people, the feet are very dirty, so if ever that you're going to move things that are on the floor, it is best to just bend down and reach for them using your hands. This is something that I have been corrected for several times by my husband. Sometimes when I'm carrying a lot of things in my hands, I just shut the door or open the door with my legs or my feet. And he points out that I should avoid it. Another thing is when wiping the floor, it is best to wipe them with your hands and not with your feet. Another thing that you should avoid doing in Japan is eating while walking. In Japan, you would rarely see people eating or drinking while walking on the streets. Also, we know that in Japan, bowing is a form of greeting, and there are many different levels of bowing depending on its purpose. If it's a simple greeting, they usually do a 30-degree bow, while to express gratitude, they might do a 45-degree to 60-degree bow, or it can be a 90-degree bow for a deep apology. As a Filipino, I was used to greeting friends by doing a small nod like this. Hey! But in Japan, I have never seen any Japanese person doing that. Instead, they greet other people like this. Lastly, Japanese people's way of counting is a little different from what we were used to. As a Filipino, we would count this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in Japan, they count this way. They start with an open palm and then fold their fingers one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's it for this video. If there are other gestures in Japan that we should do or avoid that you want to add on the list, please feel free to comment them below. Thank you for watching and see you again on our next video. Bye!